If we're Daf Chav Tes, we're going to start Chav Ches Samad Beis at the mission at the bottom. Rishus Hagva B'Kesef, Rishus Hehedred B'Chazaka. Hektish takes possession of things with the payment, but regular people, payment for movable items does not take place. Excuse me, not for real estate items takes place with Chazaka, or even for non-real estate items, for movable things. You need to hand over the reins of the animal or whatever. You have to lift it up. So money does not make a kinyan, does not change the ownership for a movable thing, but it does for hektish. And saying something for hektish is the same as actually handing it over for a regular person making an acquisition. Gemara, Tanarabanan, what does it mean, or what's an example of that hektish takes over things with money? Gizbar shenasan mas behema, afilu behema b'sofa olam kana, u'vehedret lo kana ad sheyimshach. If an agent of hektish would buy an animal, even if the animal's on the other side of the world, as soon as he handed over the money, the animal belongs to hektish, even though he obviously never saw it, never touched it, and certainly couldn't make a kinyan on it. But the money itself makes the kinyan. But for a hedjot, a regular person buying an animal, you don't acquire when you give the money until you do mashicha. You make the actual kinyan. And what does it mean that saying for hektish is like giving over for a regular person? That if you said this ox is for a korban ola, or this house is for hektish, even if it's on the other side of the world, hektish has acquired it. But for and this is no, but for a hedjot, you wouldn't acquire it until you have to do mashicha or do a chazaka. Rashi points out that yimshach is for a movable object and yachzik is for the real estate, because we mentioned two different things, an animal and then a house. So they have different types of chazaka. So what if a regular person was redeeming something from hektish and he did mashicha, he did the kinyan, but he didn't actually redeem it for the money until this item of hektish had doubled in value. So nasan masayim, he has to pay the double. My time, what's the reason? V'nasan hakesef hakam lo, because we learned that the kinyan of for hektish is from giving money. The pasuk says in Kiddushin, no, not Kiddushin, in Bahar, so because when you give the money, that's what makes the object change hands, redeeming it from hektish. So even though he gave it to you, the gizbar gave it to you, and the market value of this thing was $100, but before you actually paid it, with doubled in value, you have to pay the double value. It didn't become yours, you didn't redeem it yet until you actually handed over the money. And what happened if the reverse case? He gave it to you and it was worth 200, and suddenly the value went in half. No sin masayim, you still have to give 200. My time, what's reasonable? Because a regular person's kinyan shouldn't be stronger than hektish. Because in the case of a regular person, because you did the kinyan and it was worth 200, you took possession when it was 200, so you have to pay 200. So we can't say that hektish is worse than a regular person. So what if you redeemed it for 200, but before you did a kinyan, it plummeted in value, it was only worth 100, you still have to pay the 200. My time of nasan hakesef hakam lo. Because v'nasan hakesef hakam lo, and in this case, you paid the 200. So at the time that you paid, it was worth 200. So you have to pay all 200. You don't get a discount. If you redeemed it for 100 and you didn't do the kinyan yet, so you gave the money, but you didn't do the kinyan yet, and now that it went up in value. So because with that which is redeemed, and you only give 100. So meaning you paid 100, and because for hektish, it works with the payment because you paid for it at 100, you get to keep it for 100. So then the Gemara asks, Hachinami nema lo yehi koach hedjot chomer me hektish. How come in this case hektish doesn't come out on top and you have to pay an extra 100 shekel? So the Gemara says, Atu hedjot laba misha parakai. Because if this would happen for a hedjot, you gave the money and then you'd back out, a regular person would receive a curse that the Hashem who punished the people from the Dor Mabel, etc., should curse. So even a regular person would accept a curse. So since a regular person, you legally are allowed to back out, but it's a terrible thing that Chazal instituted that you would get cursed. So in this case, so since a person shouldn't back out either, so we say that hektish is in the same situation here, and in that case, hektish would only receive $100 for it. Mishnah, all the mitzvahs of the father and the son, men are obligated and women are exempt. We're going to learn that this means mitzvahs that the son has to do for the father. It's not clear for the Mishnah. Rashi says the Gemara will explain. The Gemara is going to say that it's mitzvahs that a son has to do for a father. Men are obligated and women are exempt. And mitzvahs that did I say that backwards? In any mitzvah that mitzvahs for the son that the father has to do. Men are chayav and nashim are patur. And a mitzvah that for the father that a son does for the father, also women are obligated to do those. All positive commandments that are time bound, men are obligated and women are exempt. But positive commandments that are not time bound, men and women both are obligated in. And all negative mitzvahs, whether it's time bound or not, men and women are both obligated in it. Except women are exempt from cutting the payas and cutting the beard, and for a Kohen is not allowed to become tameh, but a female Kohen can become tameh for a dead body. So I forget, Art Scroll brought some opinion of why this mission is here. But there's right now I'm not remembering what they said, but the Makna brings a very nice opinion, and it says, how come this mission is here? Because we spoke about kinyan of a wife, and then kinyan of avadim, and then kinyan of movable property, and all types of kinyanim. Now it's talking about how to acquire olam haba. So now it's talking about what mitzvahs we're obligated in. So Gemara, my kol mitzvahs ben al-av. What does it mean, mitzvahs ben al-av? If you say that it's things that a son must do for the father and women are exempt, we learned in the Brisa ish. So when a man has to fear his father, so how do you know a woman also has to fear her father? Because the word tira'u, you must fear, or binav, that's written in the plural. So that would include not just the man, but also a woman. So men and women are both chayiv in mora'av. Amar Rav Yehuda hachikamar komitzos haben hamotel salav lasos ivno. So Rav Yehuda interpreted the Mishnah that any mitzvahs for the father, for the son, which is incumbent upon the father to do, anashim chayav v'nashim pturos. Men are obligated, women are exempt. So in this, a couple more words, we're going to say what this includes. Tanina lehuda tan rabbanan. So this would fit in with the following brisa: Ha'av chayav bivno lamulo v'lifdoso v'lam de Torah l'siyusha v'lam de umnos v'yishomer af l'shita b'mayim. A father is obligated for his son to give him a bris milah, to redeem him if he's a firstborn from his mother, and to teach him Torah, and to marry him, find him a wife, and to teach him a trade, a profession. And some say also to swim in water. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Kol she'eino melamed es beno umnos melamdo listos. Rabbi Yehuda says whoever doesn't teach his son a trade has taught him to be an armed robber. Listos akadaitach, he taught him how to be an armed robber. He didn't teach him how to be an armed robber. Eloki ilu melamdo listos, as if he taught him to be an armed robber, because without a trade, what else is he going to do except steal from people. Okay, two dots. Lamula minala. What's the source that a father is obligated to circumcise his son? To see the pasuk says, "Vayam alava Yitzchak beno," and Abraham circumcised Yitzchak his son. Vehechat lo mahalei avua machayve beidina mahalei. Tiksiv himolachem kol zachar. And if a father didn't mal the son, the Beis Din has an obligation to circumcise the son, as it says, himol kol zachar. And if the Beis Din didn't, then he has an obligation to circumcise himself, because whoever is uncircumcised, who is not circumcised, and he will be cut off. So even though these psukim are from, well, the next pasuk. So these psukim are all from Lach Lecha. So obviously, well, but besides for these different obligations of who's obligated, there are more than one mitzvahs of circumcised. According to, I think, Reb Chaim Brisker, so there's a mitzvah to cut off the orla, and there's a mitzvah to be circumcised. So the mitzvah to cut off the orla only happens once, and then the mitzvah to stay circumcised would be forever. So I guess based on that, you could explain the Mishnah Pirkei Avos that whoever reverses, and this was a problem in the Hellenized, in the Hanukkah time, but in other times where people didn't want to appear circumcised, if they wanted to try to undo their bris milah, even if they were circumcised, but they wouldn't have a status of being circumcised anymore because they reversed the process. So I mean, they couldn't add on a foreskin, but they're not no longer that. And the orla was cut up, but they're not circumcised. And the rugged shaver says there's 3 dinim, and I forget exactly the third, but I think it has to do with the fact of an RL isn't allowed to eat a korban. So how can women eat korbanos? So even though they're not mulos, but because they have no orla, so they have a status as if they're mahulos without actually being maho. But Rav Zevin mentions in Nishim Rishitos that the Nut Ragachover says there's 3 dinim of Mila. So in the first wide line, Ihi Minalan, Deloma Chayva, how do we know that a woman is not obligated to circumcise her son? That Abraham circumcised his son as Hashem commanded him and not her. Ashkan Miyat. So now there's a principle. The Rambam says it in Chulin, I think in the 6th parak or the 7th parak, that we only have to do mitzvahs if it was given to Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai. These were given to Avram Avinu. So how do we know that these were recommanded at Har Sinai? Tanadve Rabbi Shmuel, Kamalkush number Tzav Eino Elo Miyad Uladoros. The yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel said, whenever it says command, it's to make us hurry to do a mitzvah. So it's to give people a motivating immediately and for generations. 0 is a motivating factor. Hashem told Moshe to command Yeshua and strengthen him and give him courage. So that's how we know that the word tzav is to give encouragement and motivation. Miyada l'doros, how do we know that tzav is not just for that time, but it's for all generations? That's, I think, in Parshas Korach. Hashem commanded for Moshe from now and for other generations. So the mitzvah had to be repeated at Har Sinai, and we know in Parshas Tetzaveh, it's Parshas Tazria, it says Bayam Hashmini Yimal Basar Lasa. So even though this mitzvah Oh, because it's kasher tziva osolakim. So the word tziva shows that it's ladoros. But the Rambam would interpret it that teaches us that it had to be repeated at Har Sinai, and then in Parshas Tazria, v'yom hashmini yom basarla. So that's where it was commanded to Moshe, and Moshe commanded to Bnei Yisrael. Lift also to redeem, if a father must redeem his son. Minalan, how do we know? Diksiv v'chol b'chor b'necha tifteh. So all this seems to be from Parshas Kisisa, but we also know that it's in Parshas Bo. All firstborn of your sons you should redeem. And if his father never didn't redeem him, he has to redeem himself. Padosif test, surely redeem. So if the father didn't and you're unredeemed, you redeem yourself. And how do we know that the mother doesn't have to redeem him? So when it says tipadeh, be redeemed, we could read it as tifdeh, you shall redeem in the second direct person. Kol mitzuva liftos es atzmo, mitzuva liftos acheru. Whoever is obligated to redeem themselves is obligated to redeem someone else. And someone who's not obligated to redeem himself is not obligated to redeem others. And how do we know that she's not obligated to redeem herself? To redeem herself. It's a little bit circular. Whoever others are obligated to redeem, it is a mitzvah to redeem themselves. And if someone is not obligated to be redeemed by someone else, they don't have to redeem anyone else. And how do we know that someone else, a father or daughter or whatever, doesn't have to redeem his daughter? All firstborn of your sons will be redeemed, your sons and not your daughters. Taner Rabbanan, we learned in the Brisa. Who liftos with no liftos, who kodem livno? What if he never was redeemed and he has a firstborn son? Who kodem livno? He should redeem himself first. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Beno Kod Moshe Zeh mitzvos olav v'zeh mitzvos beno alav. Rabbi Yehuda says that you should redeem your son first because this person, it's true he has to redeem himself, but it really originally was his father's obligation. But for his own son, it's really his obligation. So he's the primary person to redeem. I mean, there's a logic for this, according to this, to say that if, well, it could fetch if his father isn't alive, maybe should he redeem himself first? But it seems there wouldn't be a differentiation. I'm Rav Yirmiyah. Rav Yirmiyah says, Hakol modim. Everyone agrees as we go to Chav Tesabet Beis. Kol hecha deleka ala chamish slaim hu kodem livno. If he only has 5 shekel, so he could only do one, he has to redeem himself. My time a mitzvah to gufei adifa, because a mitzvah for himself, for his own body, takes precedence. The machlokas is if he has 5 shekel in his wallet and he has 5 shekel which are tied up in real estate, so they're encumbered or mortgaged. Rabbi Yehuda Savar Malva de Kazabatar Ksuva B'Shtar Damya, that a loan that's written in the Torah is as if it's written in a star. We actually saw this on Daf Yud Gimel. Bahani Chamesh Parik Librei. And so with the 5 shekel in his pocket, he should redeem his son. And the Kohen could come and take the 5 shekel which are encumbered or mortgaged and redeem him. That's what Rabbi Yehuda holds. It's a little bit strange why for the Rabbi Yehuda side that they mentioned Torah and here they use the Aramaic word oraisa. But something written, a debt, so meaning the 5 shekel to redeem is like a malva. But if it's written in the Torah, it's not like it's written in a star, according to the Rabbanan. So therefore, the mortgaged money are not available to be taken by the Kohen as payment for to redeem, and therefore the mitzvah of his own body takes precedence, and he should redeem himself with the 5 shekel that he has. What if he has enough money either to redeem his son or to be ola l'regel? He can't do both. So he should redeem his son, and then that would take precedence. And if somehow he'd get more money, then he should go to Yerushalayim for Yantif. He should not go to Yerushalayim first and hope that maybe he will find money to be Ola Regel. I mean, to be his son. Rabbi Yehuda Mer Ola Regel V'achakach Podas Benosha Zu Mitzvah Overes V'Zu Mitzvah She'eino Overes. Rabbi Yehuda says he using his money to go to Yerushalayim for the Chag takes precedence of Pidyon Aben because being Ola Regel is a mitzvah that passes, and if you don't do it on time, you're going to lose it out completely. But to redeem the son, you could always do it later. Bishlam Rabbi Yehuda Kedamar Taima. So we understand Rabbi Yehuda said the reason that you should be Ola Regel first is because it's if you don't do it, you're going to lose out. So you should do that mitzvah first. Al Rabbanan my tamayu. What's the reason the Rabbanan that you should redeem your son first and then be Ola Regel? So they learn out from the pasuk in Kisisa that you redeem your sons and you should not see my face empty. See my face empty is you shouldn't go to the be Ola L'Regel without a korban. So we see that the Torah explicitly says puts Alila Regel after redeeming your son. So therefore you would redeem the son before you be Ola Regel. How do you know if you have 5 sons from 5 wives? You have to redeem all 5 from. So each one's a firstborn, because each one was a firstborn from their own mother. All firstborn sons you should redeem. So the Gemara says, it's obvious. It's obvious because we don't even need Exeris Akaso because the pasuk explicitly says it depends on the opening of the womb. Whoever is the opening of the womb, you have to redeem. So mahu to say manelef b'chor b'chor minachla. So we might think that you would learn a gzer shava from inheritance. Malahalan reshis ono avkan reshis ono kamash malan. Just like for the your firstborn for inheritance has to do with actually the oldest son. So we need this drasha to teach us that we do not learn that the Gzera Shava and each firstborn is redeemed. Now there is an important gra about Reshis Ono from so the gra basically learns, if I'm remembering correctly here, that because Reshis Ono, it means basically which son was conceived first. Let's say you had one son that was conceived first, and you know that he was conceived first, but the other one was born first. So let's say that you got married in Tishrei, and then you got married in 2 months later in Kislev to another wife. And so we know Adam that you certainly the second wife was not pregnant when and so she had a baby first. So she had a baby after 7 months, and the first wife had a baby after 9 months. So the gradually learns this out in Parshas Ki Seitze of Ahuva and Asnua, and he says that the baby that's born first isn't the son for Nachla, but it's the baby that was conceived first, even if he ended up being born second. But this, what the Gra says is implicit in this word, the way the Gemara mentions it here, Reshis Ono, and it doesn't say the first baby who is born, because it could be the second baby that's born, but it was conceived first, and that would be the Bechor for Nachla. Okay, the Lam de Torah, father has to teach us on Torah. Minala, and what's the source for that? So in Shema, you have to teach them to your sons. And if his father didn't teach him, he has to teach himself. Ulamatim, excuse me, it's a different pasuk in Parshas V'eschana. Ulamatim osam u'shmartim lasosam. You have to learn them, the words of Torah, and guard them to do them. How do we know that the mother isn't obligated to teach her son Torah? That about teaching, but I guess you could darshan it ulamatem and learn. Whoever has an obligation to learn has to teach. And whoever is not obligated to learn does not have to teach. Excuse me. Whoever doesn't have to teach doesn't have to learn. And lamelaf nafsha, and how do we know that a woman doesn't have to teach herself? Tiksiv v'limatem ulamatem kol shachem mitzvah l'lamdo mitzvah l'lamed asatzmo. V'chol she'ein acher mitzvah l'lamdo. Now we're in the second wide line. Ein mitzvah l'lomod asatzmo, because of v'limatem and reading it as ulamatem. V'limatem is teach, ulamatem is learn. If others are obligated to teach you, you have an obligation to learn yourself. And if other people are not obligated to teach you, you're not obligated to learn yourself. And how do we know that others are not obligated to teach a woman Torah? So teach your sons and not your daughters. So I have to point out that the poskim talk about this, and they say that women are obligated to know the laws that are relevant to them. So it's not that they don't have an obligation to learn Torah, but they don't have, let's say, korbanos. So korbanos aren't relevant. She can't do avoda anyway. So for that would be Torah lishma, if I could use that word. So the women aren't obligated to learn Torah lishma. They're obligated to learning Torah for practical reasons. Because some poskim are saying, how come women make brachas Torah? So the answer, because they do have to know halachos that are relevant for them. If he has to learn and his son has to learn, who takes precedence? So he takes precedence to learn over his son. Rabbi Yehuda Amar im ben Ozar is umamulach, or some change the word to umamula, but no kodmo. If his son is highly motivated, again, I'm using the word motivated for Zariz, but Avraham was Zariz by waking up early to saddle his donkey to go for to do the Akedah. So if the son is highly motivated, and Rashi points out that the father sees that the son has a much higher probability of succeeding than the father, and he doesn't have money for both, but no kodmo. The son would take precedence. He should pay to have his son learn. Kihad Rav Yaakov Berei Rav Acha Bar Yaakov. Rav Yaakov, the son of Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, so I guess Rav Yaakov was named after his grandfather. Shadrei Avula Kamei Da Abaye. His father put him in front of Rabbi also Chazir de Lahavim Mechadid in Shmaitze, but he saw that he wasn't sharp. He didn't know the sugya too clearly. So Amar Le Ana Adifa Minach Tuv At Te'azal Ana. So the father Rav Yaakov said, excuse me, Rav Acha said, you're not. It's more important for me to learn, because you're not getting it, so you leave, and I'm going to go learn. Shama Abaye de Kahava Asi. So Abaye heard that Rav Acha was coming. Havahu Mazik Be Rabbana de Abaye. There was a certain mazik by the base medrash of Abaye de Kahava Aili Bas Betrain. Afil Bi Mama Havu Miski. It was such a strong mazik that even if two people come, normally if there were two people, a mazik wouldn't attack, or if it was daytime, a mazik wouldn't attack. But even if it was two people in the daytime, the mazik attacked them. Amar lahu lo leisiv le inishu shpiza. So no one should invite Rav Acha into sleep after the misrachish nisa, because maybe, or I think the Marsha says it wasn't a maybe. He knew that Rav Acha's chus was immense, and he would be successful, and the mazik would be destroyed. All bas bahu beidina. So he went and slept in Igbahat Vahu Be Rabbanan, and so Rav Acha, no one invited him, so he slept in the base medrash. Idmile Kitanina Deshiva Rishuse, and the mazik appeared like a snake with 7 heads. So I think sometimes we see in Chazal and other cultures have fairy tales or imagery that's similar. So this would be like the Hydra, I think. And another example of that would be Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guards the gates to Gehenna, we have in our medrash, we say that the three sons of Korach were not fully swallowed by the earth, but they're by the Pesach de Gehenna, saying Moshe emes v'Torah so emes. So Kol Kriya the Kara Natar Chad Reshe. So every time he would bow down in tefillah, one of the heads of the snake would fall off. So he told Abaye, if a miracle would have happened, I would have been in a dangerous situation. I'm not exactly sure why this Gemara is here, but it's possible to show that Rav Acha made the right decision that he should learn and not his son, because if his son should have taken precedence, he probably wouldn't have had enough schus to overcome this mazik, whatever it meant. So I guess this story could be showing that if the son isn't going to be successful, the father would take precedence and learn. Tanar Bana, we learned in the Brisa. So we're about 12 lines up from the bottom. Last word in the line is Tanar Bana. If you could either learn Torah or get married, you should learn Torah and then get married. And if it's impossible, he should get married and then learn. I'm Rabbi Huda Mershmuel. Halacha nos isha b'achakach Torah. Rabbi Huda Mershmuel says the halacha is you should get married and then learn. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Rechaim b'tzavar v'yasek b'Torah. There's a grindstone at his neck, and he should learn Torah. Meaning, you should definitely learn Torah and not get married first. It seems to be a machlokas. Which one do you do first? V'lo pligi, but they're not arguing halan v'halahu. So Rashi explains that Bnei Bavel, who would travel to Eretz Yisrael, because they were dormitory students, they didn't have to have a household. They could just learn. They should, because they are in a foreign place, I guess they don't have. See, Rashi says, "Ein tzarchei bas mutalin alav nosa isha." Tavi below here. I would think that if you're living in a dormitory, you don't have to worry about your gashmias. So you should be able to learn. But for whatever reason, he says that they should get married so they wouldn't have hair horror. So they would be thinking about, what would it be if I had a woman? They do averos otherwise. So it's better for them to get married and then learn. But if someone wasn't traveling, they should learn Torah and then get married. The Tosfos doesn't like that opinion for a couple of reasons. One reason is Rabbi Yochanan was an Amor in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Huda Mershmuel was in Bavel. So if it was all about that, why should Rabbi Yochanan tell people in Bavel what to do, and why should Shmuel say what they should do in Bavel? So Rabbi Tam said that Rabbi Yochanan was saying you should learn Torah. He was talking to Bnei Bavel, because if they would get married first, you couldn't get married and then leave your wife to go to Eretz Yisrael to learn. Not everyone was like Rabbi Akiva. Most people, that was an exceptional case. So if you have to travel to learn, go learn and then get married. If you don't have to travel to learn, you should get married and then learn. That's how Tosfos explains this. Okay, 2 dots. Oh, but also in this halacha, the Rambam does say that certain exceptional people, I think they can delay marriage till age 40, like Ben Papa, what was his name? Benzoma. I think Benzoma and Ben Azai. So there is a heter, the Rambam says, because they were exceptional and they would learn so much, so they could postpone getting married. Mishtabech leil Rav Chisda Rav Huna B'Rav Hamnuna Da'adam Gadol. Rav Chisda praised Rav Hamnuna B'Rav Hamnuna that he's a great man. Amar like Shiavel Liyada Chaviyu Liyadai. So he says, when he comes to you, bring him to me. When he came, he saw that he wasn't wearing a head covering. So it seems for some reason, Rashi says that married people wore a head covering, but it seems that if you weren't married, you wouldn't necessarily wear a head covering. We saw earlier, was it Daflik Yud Aleph about being Makadish with that there was a Amora who he needed. It seemed that he was a Kohen, so he didn't go Begila, so he needed his head covering. He took a cloth that maybe wasn't worth 5 shekel, but to him it was worth 5 shekel. So that was something else we saw about keep earlier in this Masechta. Amarle, my time of Laprisa Sudra. He said, "How come your head isn't covered?" Amarle, Delo Neswina. So he said, "Because I'm not married." So he turned his face away. Amarle, Chazidol Chazisa La'ape. Adanaso. So you say, I see you're not going to look at me. You turned away from me until I get married. Rav Huna letame, because Rav Huna follows his own reason. That is l'shitaso the Amar ben Esrim Shana v'lonasa isha kayama bavera. If you're 20 and you years old and you didn't get married, all your days are with an avera. Bavera sakadaitach. He's really living in sin because he didn't get married at age 20. Ala ema kayama behera avera. So no, not that he sins, but he's going to have thoughts of sin because he had extra years of having to think about things without being able to have a wife and an outlet. So he'll have hira avera his life. Amar Rava v'chintan avera Yisrael ad chav shana Yosef hakadosh baruch hu mitzapel adam asa Isha. Rava says in Tanad Yisrael said until 20 years old, Hashem sits and looks or anticipates for a man when is he going to get married. When he reaches 20 and doesn't, he says his bones should explode. So I mean, I know there's a different maimer that Hashem 40 days before Yetziras Havlat, he says this person's going to marry then. So I guess from this Gemara, if you put this and that together, Hashem says who he could marry, but he doesn't say when he's going to get married. And there's other discussions about Bashert. My Rebbe Rav Aaron was brought down. I saw, I think, on the OU website that Bashert doesn't mean you will, but it means that there's not one person, but there's a list of possible people you might meet, and then things have to happen that you would meet it. And they said Rav Aaron gave an example. Basically, someone from Australia and someone from the other side of the world are going to meet at a chasna of someone else, and that's the thing that would bring them together to meet. But it's not that there's one Bashert, but there's certain possibilities. But also, when's it going to happen? That's also another thing. And Amar Chisda Haida Difna Michavrei, I'm better than my colleagues, than Isvi B'Shitzar, because I got married when I was only 16. And if I would have got married when I was 14, and we'll turn over to Lamed Amid Aleph, Havamina, the Satan Gir Beinach, I would basically poke my fingers in the eyes of the Satan. Because if he would have got married at 14, he had less hear her because he only got married at 16. And if he would have got married at 14, he would have very, very little hear her.